Hello, welcome to this episode of a Creative Approach podcast. I'm your host, Karen Poirier-Brody. Thank you for listening. I hope you've had a good week. Our family had our annual summer celebration, where we get together to celebrate with a few of the children whose birthdays are pretty close together at the beginning of summer. The backyard is looking beautiful, so we decided to have a swim party. We had a delightful time with the little kids in the pool. It would have been lovely to linger outdoors, but we moved the party in after dinner as I, of course, picked the hottest day of summer for a party. We have shade, but it just wasn't enough. I probably should have started activities later in the afternoon. I hope you're having a wonderful summer and enjoying the outdoors. I want to recommend a visit to our website, www.acreativeapproachpodcast.com, where you will be able to access show notes from today's episode and our past programs. We have a Facebook page too, as well as the group page. I also want to take the opportunity to thank my Patreon members for their support. My guest today is Dr. Eliza Chin. I've known Eliza for several years through the American Medical Women's Association. She also lives not far away from me, so we get to work on several projects together. Dr. Chin, Eliza, is an active physician, author, and leader with many skills and ideas. Her interests include mentoring young women in medicine, geriatric medicine, women's health, medical humanities, women's leadership, and the history of women in medicine. I'm so happy to have her share her creative approach with us today. Hello, and welcome to a Creative Approach podcast. Today, my guest is Dr. Eliza Chin. Hi, Eliza.
Hi, Karen. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
Well, thanks for joining me. Now, Eliza is the Executive Director of the American Medical Women's Association, and I've known her for several years. Eliza's also an author and practices medicine actively, and I think it would be helpful maybe if you just wanted to tell us a little bit about some of those jobs and some of the other things you do, because Eliza is an incredibly busy, creative person. So maybe you want to start with some things about the American Medical Women's Association.
Great. Thanks so much, Karen. So I am a past president of the American Medical Women's Association, and I've been executive director now for probably about 4 years of the organization. It's been a wonderful experience. I really enjoy working with all of our members, from the physicians to the residents to the medical students and now our pre-medical students, and helping to build programs in AMWA that will help advance women in medicine and also support women's health.
And what brought you to AMWA in the first place, Eliza?
So my medical school did not have a branch of AMWA, which is how most members get introduced to AMWA. So I actually discovered AMWA later in my career. I had just finished work on a book, an anthology called The Site of Doctoring, Reflections from Women in Medicine. And I was looking to connect with a group like AMWA, where there were a lot of women physicians. I had also encountered some AMWA past presidents in my research and work on the book, and a few of them wrote pieces for the book, or I was able to find writings historically that I added to the book. And so I had learned quite a bit about AMWA when I was doing research for the book on the history of women in medicine, and was fascinated by the story of the organization and the legacy of the organization, and was thrilled to know that they were still around and active. So that was my first introduction, and I went to my first meeting, which was in Atlanta, Georgia. It was the first time I left 3 young kids behind with my husband, and went off to a medical meeting. So that was kind of a new experience for me, and really had a wonderful time. Everyone was so friendly and so supportive. I met women physicians at all different stages in their career, from retired professors to practicing clinicians like myself. And it was really a neat experience. And that was my first AMWA meeting, and I really have gone to every meeting every year since then. Eventually got involved in my local branch, eventually took on some volunteer leadership positions in the national organization, ran for president, and became president in 2010-2011, which was an exciting year for AMWA because that was our 95th anniversary year. It was also the year that a lot of things were happening in the national arena related to healthcare and healthcare reform. So it's been a wonderful experience, and the folks that I have met in AMWA and the friendships that I've made have really been invaluable.
So it was actually writing a book that brought you into an organization of women physicians. So was that your first book?
That was my first book, yes. And I'm actually working on a second collection of stories with a colleague and hoping to get that released sometime next year or so.
And that, that obviously writing a book is an incredibly creative experience and is that what brought you to think about doing the book in the first place? I mean, after all, you had gone through medical school, I assume, and residency, and were going to start practice. But what compelled the book, since you weren't already active with an organization of women physicians? What were some of the things that might have inspired you or pushed you into that area of creativity?
So you're right. I really hadn't done much in this area at all. And it was interesting. I was in New York City. My husband was actually a surgical resident at the time, so he was very busy. We lived far away from family. We had 2 children at that time. And I remember thinking to myself that it was much more challenging balancing the responsibilities of being a physician and a mother than I had anticipated. And I kept thinking back to my training years when I had women physician mentors, and they had made it look so easy. And I thought, well, this is not that easy. And I really wanted to find a network of people to talk to and share experiences. And so at that time, I read a lot of books about, being a new mother or being a working mother. But somehow being a physician, being both a physician and a mom were both kind of 24-hour jobs. You couldn't really turn one off just because you came home from work, and you couldn't, turn the other off because you went to work. And so there was something unique I felt about being a physician mother that had its own particular challenges compared to some of the other professions. So that's where I came up with the idea of, wouldn't it be neat if we had a place where women could share their stories and talk about these challenges, and as a way of finding support for each other, but also helping younger women coming up the ladder to learn from these experiences. So that was a kind of a dream and a wish that I had in my head that, I really didn't tell many people about for over a year. And I remember around that time, the Annals of Internal Medicine published a short story by Dr. Julie McMurray called Doctor's Daughter. And in that story, she talked a little bit about some of these themes, her experiences as a woman physician, as a mother, and also the experiences of her mom, who had trained in an era where not many women pursued medicine, and her mom's decision to stay home and raise the children, and, some of her thoughts on that. And I realized at that time that maybe more women would be interested in a book like this. And so talked with some colleagues. Mine, Dr. Rita Sharon, was at Columbia at the time. Talked with her. She was very encouraging. She put me in touch with some people, and kind of one thing led to another, and found a publisher that way and decided to start putting together a collection of writings. And so it's not as if I wrote the whole book, so I really need to give credit to all the authors who contributed, because it really was an anthology, and my role, I feel, is more in the collecting of the stories, piecing together, this quilt, or this, fabric of all the different experiences of women in medicine. And at that time, I really had not appreciated what it was like to train in medicine 40 years ago. But from some of the writings that people sent me, I realized that, there were many challenges and barriers that other women experienced and faced. And that really helped round out the anthology to kind of show the collective experiences of women in medicine. So that's how I got around to writing the book. It was supposed to be mostly about balancing career and family. But by the time I got all the different pieces in, I realized that there was so much more to the experience of women in medicine, and so many different facets. And so that ended up being kind of the creation of many, many different chapters that touched on a lot of different themes in the book.
Well, that's great. And then we'll have a link to your book in the show notes for the show today, so that people who are interested can look up that anthology. And I guess it's really pretty obvious then why, when you found the American Medical Women's Association, that you'd want to be involved with a group of women. And then in taking on the responsibilities of leadership in the organization, are there some things there that you feel like you created or started or helped encourage? I mean, for one thing, I know having the pre-medical student division just to try and help women who are thinking that they might want to become physicians kind of learn a little bit about what they might be getting themselves into, so to speak. But why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. We have many different divisions in AMWA, and so the first division to be established was decades ago. I want to say, I think it was in the 1950s. Don't quote me on that, though. But that was the medical student division and the junior division of AMWA, because women physicians then realized that there were particular challenges for women medical students who were still a minority in their medical schools. And so that was a way to kind of help support and mentor them. And then more recently, we added, and this was during the time when I was getting involved in national leadership, the residency division in a formal way. We had always had a liaison to the residents, but we felt that there were really particular needs in that period of a women's training in medicine that we could address through having a formal division of a residency division where they could have their own leadership and start their own initiatives. And so they've really done a wonderful job, have addressed some very, very important issues, from human trafficking to wellness to bullying, many, many important issues. And as a group, I think have come together as a leadership group. And then most recently is the pre-medical division, because there are so many young women who are interested in medical careers, who want to know if it's possible for them. I can't tell you how many times I'm asked the question, I'd love to be a doctor, but I also want to have a family. Can I do both of these things? What are my options? And so we wanted to provide a way to encourage and help young women who are interested in the medical field, and do that through establishing a formal division like the pre-medical division. We offer them leadership opportunities, and they're connected with the rest of the AMWA group, so they have mentors as from medical students to residents to physicians. And it's really a growing division, and we're very excited to see what the future holds for them.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It is an opportunity, because I think sometimes thinking about medical school, it's a long time. It's very daunting to think about where am I going, getting through all that and what can I expect at the end of the whole picture. And I think for some young women, some of us just plunge into it because we just do things without maybe thinking about it enough. I'm not sure. We just find our way and there we are. But other folk, I think, maybe a little intimidated, because it is a very long and tough process. And you're right about, it's not the kind of job that you can turn off, just like parenting. But as far as medicine itself, here you are, you're working as the executive director, you've been a president of the American Medical Women's Association, but you have a career in medicine too. You're not yet retired like me. So what sorts of medicine are you involved in right now?
So I've been involved in lots of different areas in medicine, and part of my career track in clinical medicine had to do with finding kind of the right opportunities for me that would allow me to be at home for my children and raise them. And so I have done everything from being in academic medicine to being a stay-at-home mom to having a hybrid of those and working part-time. So I have done work when I was at Columbia. I was working in women's health and internal medicine. I did teaching of residents and medical students. I've also done some occupational medicine, some utilization review, and also have worked in the geriatric setting as well out of a retirement home. And so the neat thing is that there have been many different opportunities for me to have some very rewarding clinical experiences. And I would say primarily my interests have been in the area of women's health, and more recently in geriatric medicine, and particularly recently getting an interest in end-of-life care. So it's been fascinating and rewarding, and I enjoy kind of having one clinical piece in my life still to keep me grounded as a physician and understand the challenges of practicing physicians. As the AMWA work has gotten busier, I don't know what the future will hold, but I hopefully will still be able to do a little bit of both.
And as far as the work in AMWA, are there some, maybe telling our listener a bit about what kinds of initiatives the American Medical Women's Association does and what might set it apart? Well, obviously being a women's group is probably what might set it apart from the American Medical Association. But of course, they have a women physicians division. But I think maybe giving people a little bit more of a picture about this important area in your life might be helpful.
So we do many initiatives in AMWA, and I consider our mission twofold. One is to advance women in medicine, and the other to advance women's health. And so in the area of advancing women in medicine, we do a lot of mentoring and support, have resources for career advancement. For example, in our meetings, we've had sessions on negotiation and contracts. We've had panels of deans and associate deans to talk about their career paths, to give maybe some insight and feedback to our members on how one advances their career in academic medicine. Regarding women's health, we have a lot of initiatives both on educating providers and educating patients. Historically, AMWA, was very involved a few decades ago in promoting the whole area of women's health and the importance of teaching women's health in the medical education curriculum. And we helped write some of the large curriculum books to introduce to medical schools so that everyone could have a solid curriculum in women's. In addition, the Reproductive Health Initiative, RHI, was another big initiative of ours, again, to encourage medical schools to incorporate these things into the curriculum. More recently, we're focusing not just on women's health, but really on sex and gender-specific medicine and the realization that men and women's biologies are different, and that it's important to realize these differences because there are big implications in terms of diagnosis, treatment, and management of disease. So that's been a very exciting area that, again, we've been involved in helping to set up some large summits, bringing together medical education curriculum leaders, again, to encourage integration of this type of material into the medical education curriculum. So those are our two large areas: women's health, sex and gender-specific medicine, and also career advancement for women in medicine. And we have a number of other programs that fall under the realm of women's health. So we do work in human trafficking, we do work in preventive medicine, gun violence prevention, breast cancer, cervical cancer, obesity. Basically, any initiative that our leaders feel passionate about, we are happy to get a team together to work together on this. And we've gone from setting up curriculums of our own, for example, a curriculum that we did decades ago on heart disease in women and helping to train providers in these areas, to more collaboration, I would say, in this day and age. So we will see who else is interested in some of the initiatives that we're working on, and we will pull together resources so that together we can reach a much wider group and a wider audience. And that's been the model that we've used for some of our larger initiatives. For example, the Sex and Gender Medical Education Summit that we held in 2015. We also helped collaborate on a large summit to educate and raise awareness of human trafficking among medical associations and institutions. So those are some of the things that we do. We have a networking alliance where we work together with many women in medicine groups in all the different specialties, as well as some of the large organizations in medicine, to bring together leaders, again, to talk about issues that are important to all of us. And in addition, I think that might be relevant for listeners of your podcast, because it's about creativity. We started focusing on some of the arts and humanities. And Karen, you're one of our leaders in this regarding our Studio AMWA project, which came after you and I attended the International Medical Women's Meeting and in Seoul, Korea, where we saw a wonderful display of art from women physicians from all over the world. And we wanted to try to do something similar in AMWA. And because we have a website and a virtual presence, we wanted to do it digitally so that it could be shared with a wider audience. And I'm really thrilled with how that has turned out. What was, I think, simply an idea that we had really has blossomed into one of our most important initiatives that connect women and the arts. And so if you go to our website, you will see on there Studio AMWA with an exhibit with wonderful, wonderful pieces of artwork from members and collaborators from all over the country. And I think we even have some international ones. And out of that program, we now have an artist in residence every year. And Karen, you've been wonderful helping to, chair this initiative and work with all of the artists in our community.
Yeah, it's really been fun. And I mean, fun, sort of a mild work. It's been very interesting to see people's enthusiasm for getting involved in art, and then looking at, things as far as healing in art and things that actually help physicians deal with stress and other areas where medicine and art connect. I mean, there's a certain art to medicine in itself, but I think that whole interaction of art and medicine is very exciting. And yeah, that is a fun thing that we've been doing. And there have been some other creative endeavors within there too. We have a small literary group as well, right?
Yes, and yeah, exactly. So with Studio AMWA, then we developed Literary AMWA, and that's being led by Dr. Anju Gul, who was actually working with me on my second anthology, and Christine Go. And so that's been a wonderful initiative. We have quite a large group of board of advisors and editorial board on there, many of whom are accomplished authors in their own right. And we're excited to see what that group is going to be able to have in terms of, sorry, I'm going to redo this one.
No problem. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to recap. So let me just go ask you the question again, and let me just try to redo this.
Oh, yeah. And then in regards to creative things within AMWA, in addition to the artist group, we have a literary group as well within AMWA, right?
Exactly. And that is Literary AMWA, and that is headed by Dr. Anju Gul and Christina Go. And Anju and I actually have been working on the second book project as a sequel to the first one, The Site of Doctoring. But Literary AMWA is a wonderful group. We pulled together with Anju's leadership a very talented group of editors as well as advisory board members, most of whom are authors, writers, or editors in their own right. And so it's quite an accomplished group. We're very excited to see what will be coming out of Literary AMWA. And if you go to the website, it's a beautiful website. We're hoping to share then stories and writings and even poems from women in medicine. So anyone who's listening to this podcast wants to contribute, please do so through the website.
Okay, and we'll have that listed in the show notes so people can refer to that. But yes, if the people who are listening have some stories or art related to medicine, if you want to contribute, we'd love to have your participation, I'm sure.
Great. Absolutely. And we're hoping to launch in the next year or two. We're trying to get a group together, but a music and medicine initiative. So again, the power of music, both for practitioners in terms of physician well-being, but also the power of music therapeutically for patients, and particularly patients with memory disorders or other things where music can penetrate in a way that other therapies cannot. So we're looking forward to expand and develop that initiative over the next few years.
Yeah, that's really exciting to have that kind of creative synergy going on within medicine, not only in creating things to teach and to learn and to empower, but also things that reach into what is considered sort of what most people can see as the creative spirit in terms of art and music and literature. That's really fun and wonderful. That's really wonderful. Now, I wondered, Eliza, we kind of picked up your story from when you were finished your residency and starting to write your book and everything, but maybe we could go back to the beginning, like where were you born, and a little bit about your story of who might have influenced you into medicine and perhaps into writing and being a creative person. Were you born into a family of writers, or could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I was born in Corvallis, Oregon. I have a twin sister, so that's always a neat tidbit of information. She's also a physician. She's an endocrinologist. And I never thought about publishing a book, actually. And as I do remember when I was young, my dad would always, encourage us to, do different things. And one of them was always, write a book. And we're like, oh, yeah, sure.
So there was you did have that inspiration.
There was some idea planted, I guess, maybe deep down a long time ago. And so, but...
Was your father an author, or was he a physician?
He wasn't. He liked to read. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a librarian. So, but he liked to read, and he was always had interesting ideas. So it's interesting. So I remember when I, finally started on the book project and then it actually happened, I remember thinking back to some of his words back when I was young. But I never dreamed of, I think, writing a book or doing this type of writing. And it's interesting how one's journey in medicine and, the path that your career takes sometimes can be completely unexpected. I never saw myself in the role that I am today, but I can tell you professionally, I've never been happier. I love what I do. I particularly love what I do in AMWA because it opens so many doors and so many opportunities. It allows, I think, a lot of creativity in thinking about the possibilities of what we can do in our impact on people's lives as physicians, but also our impact on medicine as a profession. I think women entering the medical field have had a large impact on medicine in raising issues that may not have come to the forefront quite as quickly as they did. And so it's been neat, I think, and a real privilege to be part of an organization that has that sort of legacy. And I think that's partly what really drew me to AMWA was the history, especially when I, every time I get a chance to, when I go to the East Coast and I'm in the Philadelphia area, I try to go to our archives, which are at Drexel University School of Medicine Legacy Center, and looking through some of the documents and the photographs and reading about the stories of some of the pioneer physician leaders in AMWA in the early years is very inspiring. And one of the projects that we're working on now is a exhibition on women physicians in World War I, and it's a fascinating story about a time when there was a lot of patriotism when the U.S. entered World War I, and there was a real need for physicians and a need for the medical corps to be expanded. But women physicians weren't granted commissions similar to men, even though nurses were and male physicians were. And so the women, they petitioned, they protested, but the government kind of stood firm. The most that they would allow was women could be contract surgeons, which was a civilian appointment. So if you got injured, there were no military benefits, there was no military rank. And so many women still did serve as contract surgeons, but others went really on a voluntary basis with groups like the American Red Cross. In AMWA, we had the American Women's Hospital Service, which was founded in AMWA for the war effort to go abroad to areas in Europe where they needed medical care, setting up clinics and hospitals to help treat the wounded, both civilians and sometimes even the soldiers. And so the exhibit talks about all the different groups and the ways that women wanted to serve and contribute to the war effort. And we are in the process now actually putting together a short documentary topic, and hopefully we'll be screening that in September at our interim meeting when we have an event at the National World War I Museum and Memorial in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, that's a great creative effort towards history. And speaking of the American Women's Hospital Service, that still exists. We still have international clinics, as I understand it. Haven't not visited one, but I would love to someday because I understand there's one in Nepal.
Yeah, so these aren't clinics that are owned by us, but these are clinics that we support that are in underserved areas that need the help. We support a hospital in Haiti, a clinic in Nepal, a clinic in Uganda, and from time to time, various other clinics that will apply for our grants. In addition, students and residents who are traveling to developing areas to help out or do research, we provide travel grants to support their work. So this is a continuation of that work that started in World War I. We're actually celebrating the 100th anniversary of the American Women's Hospital Service this year, so it's a very exciting year. And that's 2 years after AMWA's centennial, which was actually in 2015, 2 years ago. So the history and the legacy of AMWA, I think, are things that we have been really highlighting a lot recently, because there's so much to learn from the leadership of women physicians back at a time when they really had to fight and overcome many challenges. And, even though we don't have the same barriers and challenges today, there still are new ones. And we can really learn a lot from these pioneer women physicians who really stood up and really helped us get to a different place.
And inspired women all over the world. I mean, the American Medical Women's Association is associated with the Medical Women International, and I just
had that opportunity? Well, actually, it was because Eliza was going to go to the Medical Women Federation's 100th anniversary in England, but was unable to do so. But she had asked me about it, and that's how I ended up going to that. But it's really kind of neat to see that, that just celebrated its 100th anniversary, but was inspired by the start of AMWA, which started 102 years ago. So it's kind of, that the interesting synergies that it gave to women in medicine around the world is really very exciting.
Right. And so, yeah, it's really exciting. We're the oldest organization, national organization of women physicians. And there's so many groups now, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And so we hope that with our legacy and history that we can really provide a support system for so many other different women in medicine groups that have come on, and that we can collaborate and share our resources with them and together.
Going back, I wanted to go, you kind of skipped ahead again, and I was 7 when I decided I wanted to be a physician, and it sounds like you didn't have any physicians in your family. So what is it that influenced you and your sister to go into medicine?
Yeah, I've often reflected on that because you're right. We didn't have doctors in our family. There wasn't much in the media about doctors in those days, except Marcus Welby was the only doctor show that I grew up with. And so we didn't really have a lot of role models. And I think I enjoyed the sciences, but I really enjoyed working with people. And, kind of thought back then I didn't want to be in a lab as a PhD, and thought that medicine would be kind of a neat field. But it wasn't really, I would say, until my third year of medical school that it really all kind of clicked together, where you take what you learn in the classroom, you get it seen applied to real life, and, you're taking care of patients. It was a very empowering experience. And I think that's when I realized, this is a great profession that I picked. But I didn't have this, childhood dream of being a doctor. So I never had that sort of epiphany. But for me, it came really in medical school and third year of medical school. So I feel like I kind of found my way here. But it's been a wonderful journey. There's something special about the privilege of being a physician and taking care of patients at really important, sometimes vulnerable times in their life. But also, I think with the work in AMWA, the rewards of being involved in an association that can help lead and make impact on a group of physicians and also in medicine has been really rewarding for me.
Yeah, I think that whole story, for me, I like to look at the creative approach, which is what the name of the show is. But I think bringing that spirit of individuality, that we're all creative people and that we find a way to interact with the world. And, you talked about this whole history, and I think documenting our stories is just so important, and finding out about ways that we can express ourselves, whether it's in service through something like medicine or in creativity such as art or literature or music, or that. I think that's really important. Did you have any sort of thoughts about creativity and your life or medicine, or things you might want to share with the listener?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I don't think it's something that we often consciously think about. And it's probably not even, something in our consciousness that we would think about medicine and link that to creativity. But in a way it is, because every interaction with every patient is going to be different and unique. And there's, I guess, in some ways, a certain level of creativity about how that relationship evolves or how you approach a patient, because it's not just about writing a prescription and seeing them in the office for 15 minutes and sending them on their way. It's about relationships, and it's about understanding patient stories, and it's about understanding the background and all of the factors that go into medical care and treatment beyond just the science of it. And so there's a lot of creativity in medicine that I don't think we consciously think about. And there's also the importance that we're realizing more and more these days in terms of wellness, I think both for patients and physicians of the arts. And it's interesting, I was just listening to a webcast meeting today about physician wellness, and some of the issues around that. And, the arts and creativity are hopefully going to be part of the solution, and encouraging physicians to tap into that, whether it's through writing or through art or through music, I think will help physicians in their life and in their work. And we'll also find the benefits of the arts, and we're already realizing many of them, but in terms of patient care and how that can help patients who are dealing with chronic or debilitating disease, help them as well. So I think there's a really important connection between medicine and creativity, and I hope we continue to realize the potential of that.
Well, thanks for those thoughts. I think that's really does, it is an area that we need to explore even more. And thank you for sharing that with us. I've really enjoyed talking with you, Eliza. This has been really fun. I hope that our listeners will enjoy this. Let's see, let me start this again. I'm trying to say that I had a good time, but
yeah.
Thanks, Eliza, for your thoughts on creativity. I really do think those are important issues to consider, and I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and thanks for sharing that. Now, of course, we'll put links up to link folks to the American Medical Women's Association site and some of the, and to your book and to some of the things that we've spoken about here today. And so I encourage you who are listening to check that out. And so once again, thank you, and thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to a Creative Approach podcast. I hope you're a subscriber to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. Please check out our A Creative Approach podcast Facebook page, where I keep you up to date on our latest episodes. I'd love you to become a member of the Creative Approach podcast Facebook group, where you can share your thoughts and where you'll discover additional news. Do check out the podcast website, www.acreativeapproachpodcast.com. At the site, you'll find a resources tab where some of my favorite products are listed. I may receive some income from affiliate memberships of those products. Be assured these are brands and products I use and enjoy. I hope you've been able to revisit some of the past episodes of the show. Ursula Morgan from Creative Bug was a guest on episode 14. You'll find a link to Creative Bug on the resources page I've mentioned. If you want to try something new, I encourage you to check out the site. I was just visiting the Creative Bug page and found popsicle, beach towel, and cookie inspiration. Quilting, knitting, pom-pom making, as well as drawing and painting class also looked intriguing. There are all sorts of ways to try something new or revisit a skill from your past. Have fun learning. If you enjoy our show, we'd love you to post a review in iTunes. This is how you do it. You search for the podcast, A Creative Approach Podcast. You tap on it in the iTunes list. Under the logo of the show is a horizontal box with labels that say details, reviews, and related. The one you'll want to tap on next is that reviews box. And when you do, you'll see a number of stars at the top, which you can assign to the show, and then you can add comments if you wish. We'd love to have you do that. Also, just a reminder that a Creative Approach podcast website features a Patreon page tab for those who want to offer some monetary support for the program. I'll talk to you again with another interesting guest on our next episode. And sign off now with best wishes in your creative approach to life.